Amina settled into her window seat with a soft sigh, hoping, more than anything, that this flight would finally be peaceful. She had been working non-stop for weeks and was flying to attend an important work conference that could open new opportunities for her. Her mind was tired, her body was tired, and all she wanted was to rest quietly for a few hours. She placed her small bag under the seat, buckled her seatbelt and leaned her head against the cool window. For a moment she closed her eyes, letting the gentle hum of the aircraft relax her. People were still boarding, dragging luggage, talking loudly and looking for their seats. Amina didn't pay much attention to them. She had flown many times before and she knew the drill. Wait, smile politely, let people pass and pray there were no loud babies or talkative neighbors. She kept reminding herself to stay calm, to stay positive, to stay patient. She wanted this trip to be smooth. But peace did not come. A loud, irritated voice echoed from the aisle. Amina opened her eyes, noticing a tall white man struggling to shove his oversized bag into the overhead bin. He muttered angrily to himself, complaining loudly about people who don't know how to travel, and crowded cheap flights. Passengers around him shifted uncomfortably, some rolling their eyes, others choosing to look away. When the man finally forced his bag into the compartment, he looked down at his ticket, scowled and then straightened up. Amina felt his presence growing closer, his heavy steps thudding against the floor as he moved down the aisle. Seat 22B. Right next to her. Amina offered a polite smile as he approached, trying to be friendly. But instead of acknowledging her, the man glared as if she were sitting in his spot. He didn't speak. He didn't smile. He didn't even nod. Instead, he aggressively shoved past her, bumping her shoulders so hard that she almost hit the window. Amina gasped softly. "Excuse me," she said surprised, but the man didn't answer. He sat down heavily, letting his elbows spread into her space, not caring that the seat was small or that she needed room to breathe. She shifted slightly, trying to make herself smaller, but it didn't help. The tension was immediate. She could feel his anger like a cloud that followed him into the cabin. The flight attendants were still helping passengers find their seats. One attendant stopped near them and offered a warm smile. "Sir, if you need help with anything." "I don't need anything," he snapped. "Just want this plane to take off already." The attendant blinked, startled, then moved on. Amina tried to stay calm. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that his attitude had nothing to do with her. People had bad days. People were rude. She knew how to stay peaceful, usually. But then it happened. As Amina reached into her bag to pull out her headphones, the man suddenly shoved her arm away with a harsh movement, like she was an obstacle, not a human being. The force made her flinch. "Move your stuff," he growled. "You're taking too much space." Amina stared at him, stunned. "I'm not taking your space," she said quietly. "I'm just getting my headphones." He rolled his eyes dramatically. Of course. Always playing innocent. Her heart pounded. Why was he talking to her like this? Why was he being so aggressive? People nearby turned their heads. Some frowned. Some whispered. Some pretended not to see anything. But no one stepped in. Amina tried again, her voice steady but firm. "Please don't shove me. I didn't do anything to you." The man leaned closer, his eyes filled with ugly hostility. "You people always think you're the victims," he muttered loudly enough for others to hear. A hush fell over the nearby seats. Amina froze. Her face burned with humiliation. Her hands trembled slightly. She had been disrespected before. Ignored. Underestimated. But this was different. This was targeted. This was hateful. She closed her eyes for a moment, reminding herself to breathe. She didn't want to cause a scene. She didn't want to start a fight. She just wanted peace. But peace was slipping away fast, replaced by something else, a quiet fire growing inside her chest. Then the man shoved her again, this time harder, as if daring her to react. Amina steadied herself, and something in her changed. She lifted her head slowly, her eyes sharp and unafraid. The trembling stopped. The shame faded. A new strength rose up inside her, one she didn't know she had. This flight wasn't going to be peaceful, but it was about to show everyone on board exactly who they were dealing with, and why she would not stay silent anymore. Alicia walked down the narrow airplane aisle, hoping this day would finally bring her some peace. After a long week of stressful meetings and late-night work, all she wanted was to sit by the window, close her eyes, and let the flight carry her home. She placed her small backpack under the seat, buckled in, and took a slow, calming breath. For once, she wanted silence. No drama, no arguments, no problems. Just a smooth ride and a gentle landing. That was all. But trouble had already noticed her. A tall, sharp-faced white man stepped into the row behind her, grumbling loudly. His voice carried across the cabin as he complained about overhead bins, seat sizes, and people who didn't know how to travel. Alicia ignored him at first. People complained all the time during boarding. It wasn't her business. She kept her eyes on the window, watching airport workers load luggage onto the plane. The man took his seat behind her and immediately began kicking the back of her chair. First lightly, then harder, as if he wanted her to react. Alicia sat up straighter, pretending not to notice. She didn't want to fight. She didn't even want attention. She just wanted peace. But peace never lasted long around people who carried anger inside them. The man leaned forward suddenly, speaking loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "These seats are designed for normal-sized people," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Not for, others." Alicia stiffened. She knew what he meant. She had heard that tone before, sharp, mocking, racist. Still, she didn't respond. She continued breathing quietly, trying to stay calm. But the man wasn't done. Not even close. A few minutes later, a flight attendant approached to check seatbelts. The man spoke to her rudely, pointing at Alicia. "Hey, can you tell her to move her seat up? She's taking up too much space." The attendant looked confused. Alicia was sitting perfectly normally, her shoulders relaxed, her posture straight. Nothing about her was disturbing anyone. The attendant politely said, "Sir, everything looks fine." He scoffed loudly. "Of course you'd say that." Alicia kept her eyes on her lap, trying not to shake. She didn't want this. She didn't want people staring. She didn't want to cry or argue. She just wanted the plane to take off so she could pretend the world wasn't full of people like him. But fate had other plans. As the flight attendants finished safety checks, the man leaned forward and, without warning, shoved the back of Alicia's seat violently. The impact jolted her forward, her shoulder hitting the tray table. Gasps rose from rows around her. A mother whispered urgently to her child. A man across the aisle frowned in concern. Alicia inhaled sharply, pain shooting down her arm. She turned around slowly, trying to keep her voice steady. "Please don't do that," she said. Her voice was calm, controlled, respectful. But her politeness only fueled him. He smirked. "I'll do whatever I want. You people always act like victims." Alicia felt heat rise in her chest. Anger, sadness, exhaustion all mixing into something sharp. She tried to breathe through it, but something inside her snapped quietly. A thin line she had been protecting for years finally broke. She turned back to her seat without saying another word, but this time her posture was different. Her shoulders squared. Her jaw tightened. Her hands stopped trembling. This wasn't fear anymore. This was a warning. The passengers around her sensed it too. A soft wave of tension moved through the cabin. People exchanged glances, whispering behind hands. Everyone could see the man escalating, but they could also see something changing in Alicia's eyes. When the plane finally began to taxi, the racist man shoved her seat again, harder than before. But this time Alicia didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She didn't stay silent. She turned around fully, her face steady, her voice low and firm in a way that made the whole row freeze. "Do that one more time," she said, "and you'll regret it." Her words weren't loud. They weren't violent. But they carried weight, real weight. The man blinked, thrown off by her confidence. And in that moment the cabin realized something important. This wasn't the woman he thought she was. This wasn't someone who would shrink or stay quiet. This wasn't the fight he expected. Alicia wasn't afraid anymore. And the man who had shoved her was about to learn why that should terrify him. The shove that changed everything. The tension on the plane hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. Maya tried to focus on her breathing, reminding herself that this was just a flight, just a journey, and she would soon be home. She checked her watch, wishing the plane would take off quickly so she wouldn't have to deal with the angry man beside her. But fate had other plans. The man kept shifting aggressively in his seat, bumping her shoulder on purpose. At first, she tried to ignore him, turning her body slightly toward the window. But the more she avoided him, the more determined he became to bother her. His jaw tightened, his face turning more red with every passing second. Finally, he muttered loudly, "Why do people like you always sit next to me?" Maya's heart skipped. She didn't respond. Responding would only make him angrier. She kept her eyes on her hands, thinking of her grandmother's voice telling her, "Silence is sometimes strength." But the man wasn't finished. When a flight attendant passed by, Maya politely asked for a cup of water. The attendant smiled and nodded. But the moment Maya turned back to her seat, the man leaned in close, sneering, You think you're special? You think you deserve service? Maya breathed in slowly, shaking her head. Please leave me alone. He scoffed. Why don't you go sit in the back where you belong? Maya clenched her hands together. She felt a sting behind her eyes but blinked it away. She wasn't going to let him see her break. Then, without warning, he shoved her shoulder hard. It wasn't an accidental bump. It wasn't a slip. It was a deliberate, forceful shove. Maya gasped as her body tilted sideways. Her arm hit the tray table, sending a sharp pain shooting up her wrist. The passengers across the aisle turned their heads, shocked. A woman with a baby covered her mouth. An older man frowned and began to unbuckle his seatbelt. A young man removed his headphones, confused and angry. But the racist man acted like nothing happened. He leaned back with a satisfied smirk, crossing his arms. Maya's heart raced. Her breath grew shaky. Fear rushed through her, but so did something else. Something hot. Something strong. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. She straightened herself, wiped the corner of her eye, and turned to look at him. Not like a scared woman, but like someone who had finally reached her limit. The man smirked even more. What? Gonna cry? No, Maya said quietly. Not today. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't break. It carried a power that made the passengers around her straighten in their seats. For the first time since the flight began, the man's smirk faltered. Maya took a deep breath. She pressed the call button above her seat, not with panic but with calm control. The flight attendant rushed over immediately. Is everything all right? She asked. Before Maya could answer, 3 passengers spoke at the same time. He shoved her. We saw everything. Do something. The racist man's face twisted. They're lying. She's making a scene. No, Maya interrupted firmly. You're the one who crossed the line. The flight attendant stepped back, shocked by Maya's strength. She nodded quickly and called for security from the front of the plane. But Maya wasn't done. Not yet. She turned to the man and said softly but fiercely, You picked the wrong woman today. The plane had been in the air for less than an hour, but to Maya, it already felt like the longest flight of her life. She kept her eyes on the small screen in front of her, pretending to watch the movie, pretending to be calm, but her mind was racing. She could still feel the man's angry breath on her shoulder from earlier. She could still hear his muttered insults, quiet enough for others to ignore, loud enough for her to hear every word. She tried to stay strong. She told herself, ignore him. It's just a few more hours. Don't give him power. But hatred like his didn't weaken with silence. It grew. Maya reached for her water bottle, hoping a sip would calm her nerves. But as she lifted it, the man beside her suddenly leaned sharply into her space, on purpose, causing her hand to jerk. The water spilled across her lap, cold and shocking. She gasped. The man smirked. Careful, he muttered. People like you always make a mess. Those words hit deeper than she expected. A few passengers glanced their way but quickly looked away, choosing comfort over courage. Maya tried to breathe, tried to wipe her soaked clothes, tried to stay calm, but his next sentence pushed her past the point of silence. You don't belong in seats like these, he sneered. Should have stayed where you came from. Her chest tightened like a fist squeezing her heart. She felt the heat rise behind her eyes. But before she could respond, before she could gather herself, he did something no one expected. He shoved her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't accidental. It was intentional, ugly, hateful. Her shoulder hit the armrest hard. Pain shot through her arm. She stared at him, stunned, her breath stuck in her throat. For a moment she felt like a child again, small, voiceless, helpless. But that feeling didn't last long. A quiet strength rose inside her like a flame being fed fresh air. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind as clearly as if she were sitting beside her. Silence is not always peace. Sometimes silence is surrender. Maya straightened her back. She turned to him fully, meeting his cold eyes with calm fire. She didn't lash out. She didn't scream. She didn't hit him back. Instead, she raised her hand and pressed a button. Ding. The flight attendant call light lit up overhead. The man stiffened. He hadn't expected that. He expected fear. He expected her to shrink, to disappear into her seat, to pretend nothing happened like so many victims before her. But Maya was done pretending. Her voice was steady, too steady for a woman who had just been shoved. You touched me, she said quietly. And you're going to answer for it. The man's eyes widened. Passengers nearby straightened. Even those who had ignored everything before now sensed something different. The cabin, moments ago filled with movie sounds and casual chatter, felt suddenly charged, like a storm cloud had entered row 17. Maya turned forward again, hands folded in her lap, breathing slowly, reclaiming her power one breath at a time. She didn't know exactly what was about to happen. She didn't know what the flight attendant would say, or what the man would do next. But she knew one thing. This time she would not sit quietly. This time she would not let hatred win. And the man beside her, the one who thought he owned the space around him, was about to learn the kind of strength he had never imagined she possessed. The fight he never expected. The plane felt strangely quiet after the chaos. Some passengers kept pretending to read their magazines. Others stared at the clouds through the window even though the plane hadn't moved an inch. A few whispered in low voices, stealing nervous glances at the man who shoved her. But everyone, all at once, felt the tension spreading through the cabin like electricity. The racist man sat in his seat with his arms crossed, breathing loudly through his nose as if he were the victim. His face was red, and he kept muttering insults under his breath, loud enough for a few passengers to hear but not loud enough for the flight attendants to catch. Every word was poisoned with anger. Every glance he threw toward the black woman held the same ugly message. Sit down. Stay silent. Know your place. But she did not look shaken. She sat up straighter, her hands folded neatly in her lap, chin slightly lifted. Her breathing had steadied. Her face was calm, not cold, not angry, just firm and unbreakable. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She simply refused to shrink. And that confidence irritated the man more than anything. You think you're brave? He hissed quietly, leaning slightly toward her. Just wait till we land. People like you always cry when real trouble comes. She turned her head slowly and looked him dead in the eye. Her voice was soft, dangerous and steady. I don't cry, she said. I fight. The man froze. He wasn't expecting that. Her words struck him like a slap, sharp, shocking, unforgettable. Meanwhile, two flight attendants hurried back toward the front of the plane, whispering urgently. One of them pulled out a small tablet device, her fingers shaking. We need the captain, she said. Now. The captain arrived moments later, a tall man with silver hair and a calm face worn from years of storms, emergencies, and unpredictable skies. But even he looked shocked when he stepped into the row and saw how shaken the passengers were. What's happening here? He asked firmly. The woman spoke before anyone else could. This man shoved me, she said in a steady voice. Repeatedly. After using racial slurs. And he tried to block me from taking my seat. The man jumped up as if waking from a nightmare. She's lying, he shouted. She pushed me first. She's dramatic. That's what. Sir, the captain cut him off sharply. Sit down. But the man didn't sit. In fact, he puffed out his chest, trying to look bigger, tougher, louder. You're taking her side? He demanded. Because she's a woman? Because she's... He didn't finish the sentence. Everyone knew what he meant. The captain narrowed his eyes. I'm taking the side of the truth. The racist man laughed bitterly. Truth? There's no proof. Nobody saw anything. At that moment, a voice from behind said quietly. I saw everything. Everyone turned around. It was an elderly Asian woman sitting 2 rows back. She held up her phone, the screen glowing brightly. I recorded the whole thing, she said calmly. From the moment he blocked her aisle to the moment he shoved her. Gasps erupted around the cabin. The racist man's face drained of color. Another passenger stood up, a middle-aged white man with glasses. I saw it too, he said. I'll testify if needed. Then a teenager raised her hand. And me. Then 2 black women across the aisle. And us. Then a man in a suit. And me. Then almost half the plane spoke at once. We saw it. The racist man stumbled backward into his seat, shaken now, not from anger but fear. He had come on the plane believing he had power. He thought nobody would defend a black woman. He thought the world would quietly let him be cruel. But this time the world fought back. The captain turned to the flight attendant. Call ground security. This passenger will not be flying with us. The racist man panicked. You can't do that. I paid for this flight. You paid for a ticket, the captain said coldly. Not a free license to abuse people. The man reached out as if grabbing for help, but no one touched him. No one defended him. No one looked at him with sympathy. He was alone. The black woman finally spoke, her voice low but strong. I told you, she said. I don't cry. I fight. And at that moment, the man understood something he never believed possible. The people he underestimated, the people he insulted, the people he shoved, were stronger than he ever was. And he was about to learn just how strong she truly was. The moment that turned the plane silent. The cabin felt heavy with tension as Maya stood there, her breathing steady but firm. She wasn't shaking anymore. She wasn't scared. Something inside her had shifted, something strong, something powerful. She could feel every pair of eyes on her now, watching her every move. Some passengers looked guilty for staying silent earlier. Others looked shocked, surprised to see her standing so confidently after being shoved by a man twice her size. And a few were admiring her bravery. The racist man who shoved her, Mr. Turner, was still sitting there red-faced and angry, but now his expression had changed. It wasn't confidence anymore. It wasn't power. It looked more like fear mixed with disbelief. He never expected the woman he shoved to stand up for herself. He never expected the entire plane to turn against him. And he definitely never expected the flight crew to step in with such force. The head flight attendant stepped forward again. "Sir, I'm giving you one chance to calm down," she said harshly. "You shoved a passenger without reason. You caused panic. You are now a safety threat." Passengers murmured in agreement. Some nodded. Even the children aboard turned around in their seats to see what would happen next. Mr. Turner scoffed, but it didn't sound strong. "This is ridiculous. I didn't do anything." But then Maya spoke, calm, controlled, strong. "You shoved me," she said simply. "You thought I'd stay quiet? But I won't." Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried across the cabin like a blade cutting through fog, sharp, clear, unforgettable. A woman a few rows down called out, "I saw everything." "She didn't do anything wrong. You started it." A man added, "Yeah, we all saw it. She was just standing there." For a moment Mr. Turner looked around, stunned. He had expected people to ignore it, maybe even support him. But instead, the truth was staring him in the face. The passengers he thought would stay silent were speaking up. The people he thought he could intimidate were pushing back. His power was slipping away, fast. The flight attendant took a deep breath and spoke clearly. "Because of your behavior, we have two options. Either you sit calmly and accept the report we will make, or the pilot will order security to escort you off the flight immediately." Mr. Turner opened his mouth to protest, but before he could speak again, something unexpected happened. A man in business attire stood up from first class and walked slowly toward them. His face was calm, but there was a seriousness in his eyes that made everyone pay attention. He spoke to the flight attendant first. "Is everything under control?" The flight attendant nodded respectfully. "We're handling it, sir." But when the man turned to Maya, his expression softened. "Are you okay, miss?" Maya nodded. "I'm fine now." The man then turned to Mr. Turner, and his voice hardened like steel. "I saw everything from my seat. You shoved her. And you didn't just shove her, you did it with hate. That won't be ignored." Mr. Turner frowned. "Who are you?" The man pulled out a wallet and flashed an ID. The passengers gasped. The flight attendant's eyes widened. It wasn't a regular ID. It was federal. "I'm a federal investigator," the man said calmly. "And what I just saw may be considered a hate-motivated assault." The entire plane went dead silent. Mr. Turner's eyes widened. He finally understood. He couldn't talk his way out of this. He couldn't twist the story. He couldn't pretend to be the victim. Everything had changed and he had no control left. Maya felt a chill run down her spine, not fear but relief. For the first time since the shove, she felt protected. Respected. Mr. Turner sank back into his seat, trembling. I didn't mean." The federal officer cut him off. "Save it. The moment we land, you and I will have a conversation you won't forget." Passengers clapped again, louder this time. Not for the officer. Not for the crew. But for Maya, for standing up, for fighting back, and for not letting hate push her into silence. And for the first time since the flight began, Maya sat back down with her chin held high. The fight wasn't over yet. But now she had the whole plane, and the law, on her side. The moment she took back her power. The cabin stayed strangely quiet after the chaos earlier. Some passengers avoided looking in her direction, embarrassed by their own silence. Others looked at her with quiet respect. But Maya, the black woman who had been shoved, sat tall now. Her shoulders were straight, her hands calm in her lap, and her breathing steady. She was done shrinking. She was done staying quiet. She wasn't afraid anymore. A few rows behind her, the racist man sat with a sour, annoyed expression. His arms were crossed, his leg bouncing angrily. He kept muttering to himself, too low for others to hear, but his frustration was obvious. Every time Maya glanced back, he quickly looked away. He wasn't bold anymore. Not after the witness videos. Not after the flight attendants warned him he could be removed and banned. His arrogance was shrinking and fast. What he didn't know was that the consequences were only beginning. The lead flight attendant approached Maya again, this time with a different look in her eyes, part apology, part admiration. She leaned down and whispered, "We've contacted security at the next airport. They'll be waiting when we land. You won't go through this alone." Maya nodded, grateful but still shaken. She had never wanted a fight. She had never asked for confrontation. She simply wanted to travel in peace like everyone else. But the moment she had been shoved, the moment he tried to humiliate her, something inside her had changed. She realized she wasn't only standing up for herself, she was standing up for every person who had ever been mistreated and told to ignore it. As the plane prepared for descent, the captain made an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated when we land. We will have airport authorities boarding the aircraft." The racist man's head snapped up. His eyes widened in panic. For the first time he looked scared. Authorities? For what? He barked loudly, trying to act innocent. But no one defended him. Not this time. The passengers who witnessed everything earlier finally spoke up. A woman from the aisle seat said, "We saw what you did." A teenager added, "Yeah, and we recorded it." An elderly man muttered, "You picked the wrong woman today." The racist man's face turned pale. He looked around desperately, like he was searching for someone, anyone, to save him. But all he found were people tired of his behavior. People who had watched enough injustice in their lives to recognize a line that had been crossed. As the plane touched down, Maya held her breath. Her palms felt warm, her heart pounding, but she felt stronger than she had ever felt before. She wasn't hiding behind fear anymore. When the plane stopped at the gate, 2 uniformed security officers boarded with confident steps. The entire cabin watched silently. "Ma'am," one officer said to Maya with respect, "are you okay? We saw the report." Maya nodded softly. Then the officer turned sharply toward the man. His voice hardened. "Sir, we need you to come with us." The racist man sputtered. "Me? What did I do?" "She's exaggerating." A passenger stood up. "No, she's not. We saw everything." Another passenger added, "He shoved her. Hard." The teenage boy lifted his phone. "And we have video." The man's mouth fell open. His arrogance melted into fear. "You can't be serious. She provoked me." The officer shook his head firmly. "Sir, you are being escorted for investigation of assault, harassment, and possible hate-related behavior." Gasps filled the cabin. Maya exhaled slowly, feeling a weight lift from her chest. The racist man was pulled from the plane. No longer proud, no longer loud, no longer powerful. For once, he had to face the consequences he thought he'd never face. Passengers clapped softly. Some smiled at Maya. Some simply nodded with quiet respect. But Maya wasn't celebrating. She didn't need to. Justice didn't need noise, it only needed truth. As she gathered her things, a flight attendant touched her hand gently. "You handled this with so much strength. I'm sorry you went through it." Maya gave a tired but grateful smile. "Thank you. I just couldn't stay silent anymore." And as she stepped off the plane, past the officers and flashing lights, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Power. Dignity. Peace. She had fought back. Not with anger. Not with violence. But with courage, truth, and grace. And the world had seen it. The victory that echoed across the sky. The moment the plane landed, everyone inside seemed to breathe for the first time in hours. Some passengers rushed to unbuckle their belts, others whispered in excitement about what had just happened, and a few sat silently, still stunned by the courage they had witnessed. But Maya, the black woman who had been shoved, humiliated, and insulted, sat calmly with her hands folded, her strength glowing quietly around her like an invisible armor. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't afraid. She was simply done. The racist man, Daniel Briggs, was still sitting stiffly 2 rows ahead, breathing heavily, his confidence long gone. His hands shook, not because he was hurt, but because he finally understood 2 things he had refused to believe his entire life. 1. Maya was not weak. 2. His actions had consequences. As soon as the flight attendants opened the door, uniformed officers stepped inside. Passengers gasped. Many thought they were here for Maya, but they weren't. They walked straight toward Daniel Briggs. "Sir," the lead officer said sharply, "please stand. You're being detained for assault, harassment, and disruptive behavior on a commercial flight." The entire plane went silent. Daniel's face drained of color. Me? No. She fought back. She's the problem. But the officers didn't listen. They had watched the footage the flight attendants had recorded. They saw everything. And the world outside. They were already watching too. Passenger videos had gone viral mid-flight. Millions of people were already siding with Maya. Maya stood slowly, not to gloat, not to laugh, but because the officer approached her next. "Ma'am," he said gently, "we want to make sure you're all right." "You handled the situation with incredible strength." Maya nodded politely. "I just defended myself." "Yes," the officer agreed, "and you did the right thing." Passengers around them began to clap. It started as a small sound, a single pair of hands applauding quietly, and then grew louder and louder until the entire cabin erupted with cheers. "Maya, we got you. You were brave. Queen. You shut him down. That's how you stand up." Maya felt tears sting her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She stood straight, her shoulders back, her chin lifted. She had always been strong, but now others finally saw it too. Daniel, handcuffed and trembling, was escorted off the plane first. Cameras flashed outside. Reporters ran forward. His face was splashed with fear, shock, and disbelief. Maya walked off next. But unlike Daniel, she wasn't met with shame. She was met with applause. With cheering. With cameras capturing her strength. With people chanting her name. A woman rushed forward. "Maya, I recorded everything. I posted it. The whole world is supporting you." A man added, "Lawyers are already offering to represent you for free." Another said, "You turned this plane into a lesson he'll never forget." Maya's heart swelled, not with pride but with relief. She had carried the weight of disrespect for so long, brushing it off, swallowing the pain, staying silent. But today was different. Today she fought back. And the world fought with her. As she walked toward the airport doors, Daniel's angry shouts faded behind her, drowned out by the sound of justice catching up to him. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Outside, the sky looked brighter than before, wide, open, endless. Maya inhaled deeply. She came on this flight hoping for peace. Instead, she found power. And from that day forward, she walked with the knowledge that her voice mattered, her strength mattered, and her dignity would never again be pushed aside by anyone. Because when she fought back, she didn't just protect herself. She inspired everyone watching to do the same. The justice that echoed around the world. The plane finally landed on the runway, but the story of what happened inside was far from over. As passengers rose from their seats, grabbing bags and stretching out stiff legs, the racist man who had shoved Maya earlier sat frozen, unable to move. It wasn't fear of her strength. It was fear of what he heard, what he saw, and what he finally realized, that the world had changed and his actions were no longer hidden in the shadows. Maya stood calmly, gathering her bag with steady hands. Her chest still hurt from when he pushed her, but she kept her posture straight, refusing to let him see any weakness. The flight attendants guided passengers out row by row, but several passengers stayed behind, waiting for Maya. Not because she needed protection but because they wanted to stand with her. At the plane door, 2 airport security officers and a supervisor were waiting. They already knew who Maya was. They already saw the viral videos. They already knew about the racist shove, the insults, the argument, the chaos. And they already knew who was wrong. "Miss Maya Williams?" the supervisor said gently. Maya nodded. "We're here to make sure you're safe. You're not the one being questioned today." The racist man's face turned pale. Security approached him. "Sir, come with us." "What?" "She hit me. She yelled at me. Sir, the entire incident is recorded from 3 angles, the officer replied dryly. "You assaulted a passenger without provocation." His mouth dropped open but no words came out. Passengers around him crossed their arms, glaring. A few even pointed their phones at him again. He looked trapped because he was. Security handcuffed him right there in the aisle. He struggled. "This is unfair. You're doing this just because she's." A passenger snapped, "We're doing this because you shoved her, you racist idiot." Another added, "And because she finally stood up to you." Maya watched silently, not smiling, not proud, but calm. She didn't enjoy seeing anyone humiliated, not even him. But seeing justice finally move, felt like a weight lifting from her shoulders. As she stepped into the airport hallway, more people recognized her. That's her. She's the woman who stood up to him. She's so brave. Did you see the video? She handled him like a queen. Maya felt overwhelmed, but she kept walking. Then something surprising happened. A representative from the airline hurried toward her, carrying a folder and wearing a badge that showed he was someone important. He stopped in front of Maya and bowed his head respectfully. "Miss Williams, on behalf of our airline, we want to apologize for what you went through. You deserve better. You deserve respect, safety, and dignity." Maya blinked, unsure how to respond. "We are offering you a lifetime membership with free annual flights, full travel protection, and a compensation package. And," he added seriously, "we are banning that man from this airline permanently." A small gasp rose from the watching crowd. Maya wasn't expecting compensation. She didn't fight for attention or gifts. She stood up for herself because she deserved to be treated like a human being. "Thank you," she said softly. "But I only want fairness. That's all." The representative nodded. "And you're getting it." Just then someone else approached, a tall woman with a press badge. A reporter. She didn't shove a camera in Maya's face or shout questions. She walked gently, respectfully. "Miss Williams," she said softly, "your story is inspiring thousands of young women across the world. Would you mind saying something to them?" Maya looked around, at the passengers who supported her, at the officers who stood ready to help her, at the faces full of hope, justice, and pride. She took a deep breath. "I didn't want to fight," she said. "I only wanted peace. But sometimes, standing up for yourself is the only way to protect who you are. And when the world sees you, really sees you, they understand your strength." The crowd applauded. Some cheered quietly. A few wiped tears. As Maya walked through the airport with a security escort, her phone buzzed non-stop, hundreds of messages from strangers thanking her, praising her courage, sharing their own stories of racism and survival. But the message that made her stop walking came from her mother. "I'm proud of you, Maya. You didn't just fight back. You stood tall." Maya smiled, tears filling her eyes. The racist man didn't just attack her on a plane. He triggered a fire in her that had been waiting a long time to burn. Not a fire of anger, but a fire of strength. He tried to break her spirit, and instead pushed her into becoming a symbol. A symbol of dignity. A symbol of courage. A symbol of a woman who refused to bow her head. The world would remember her story. The world would share her video. The world would learn from her strength. And Maya? She walked out of that airport taller, stronger, and more powerful than she had ever felt before. Her peaceful flight turned into a battle. But she walked away as the victor.